Hi everyone, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And wow, just check this spot out. We are as far east as you can go in Canada this week, in a spot where it would be really difficult to take a bad photo. This is the amazing Avalon Peninsula in Newfoundland and Labrador. And we're here for the product launch for the latest addition to the Ford family of utility vehicles, the oh so tiny EcoSport. And I am saying that properly. It's EcoSport, not EcoSport. And you might be thinking here that Ford is a little late to the party in North America in the subcompact utility segment. It's already a well-occupied market with the likes of the Chevy Trax, the Honda HR-V, the Toyota CHR, and the new Hyundai Kona. But the EcoSport has actually been around in other corners of the globe since 2003. It's a segment that's quickly gaining traction here now, though, among millennials who want some of the utility of an SUV, but also something more efficient. Also, empty nesters are really scooping them up as they transition out of needing quite so much room. And these winding Newfoundland roads are just the ticket for getting acquainted with this new addition to the Ford lineup. So let's hop on board and see what it's made of this week here on Family Wheels. Well, the EcoSport has an interesting kind of style to it, doesn't it? It's as though the Escape got put in a can crusher and was just squashed ever so slightly. It's just under half a meter shorter than the Escape, which actually makes quite a difference in terms of parking this car in tight urban parkades or side streets. It also comes in a few $1,000s cheaper at its starting price than the Escape does, but that base S trim of the EcoSport comes in just over $22,000, is going to be very slim on features for you. It's the next level up, the SE, that Ford figures is going to be the big volume seller for them. It starts just over 25 grand, and for that you're getting a sunroof, heated front seats, Ford Sync 3 infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on a 6-inch infotainment system screen. We also have reverse parking sensors and a backup camera too. The titanium trim, which actually I'm driving right here at this moment, includes leather and a 10-speed Bang & Olufsen sound system. And then there's the sportier SES trim, which has these mixed medium seats. They look kind of cool. You also have more side bolstering in the seats and sportier suspension as well. That top, that most expensive vehicle, the SES, comes in around 29,400 bucks Canadian. Another extra that's available on all but that lowest S trim, it's well worthwhile, it's a $350 cold weather package. You get a heated steering wheel, heated side mirrors, windshield de-icer, and all-weather floor mats. It's kind of a no-brainer in Canada. And speaking of winter driving, there's another big decision that you have to make when you're shopping for the EcoSport, because you can get the S and the SE trims with front-wheel drive and a tiny little 1-liter EcoBoost 3-cylinder engine, or for an extra 2,500 bucks, there's the 2-liter non-turbo engine. And any car equipped with that larger choice also automatically gets 4-wheel drive. Now, I've had a chance to drive all the various trims and engines of this car here on this trip to see what's on offer, but I've got to be honest, while Ford says that they expect 75% of these cars to be sold with the 2-liter and 4-wheel drive up here in Canada, I actually way prefer the 1-liter EcoBoost, and I was surprised by that. Somehow it just seems a little bit more eager, and the numbers don't suggest that at all. The 1-liter has 123 turbocharged horsepower, the 2-liter has 166 of them, but it's not turbocharged, and also that 2-liter, because of the 4-wheel drive system, is going to be a bit heavier as well. And that also translates to a bit of a thirstier vehicle too. Ford says that with the bigger engine, you should average about 9.3 liters per 100 kilometers during a mix of highway and city driving, which honestly is not that great. Meanwhile, their numbers for the front-wheel drive 1-liter engine are 8.4 liters per 100 kilometers, but honestly, I've actually seen far better numbers than that. This week, we've been averaging 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers over about 250 kilometers of driving. And that is far more respectable. But to be honest, both of these engines do feel a little bit underpowered at times, especially when you're on the highway. Cruising at 100, 110 kilometers an hour, that's not the problem, but if you hit any sort of a steeper hill or you're trying to overtake someone, the EcoSport 6-speed automatic transmission hunts around a little, kind of frantically to give you the power that you need. The car is also rather noisy at highway speed, particularly that 2-liter engine, which came out at 69 decibels at 100 kilometers an hour for us during our noise reading tests. But I mean, it's clearly a vehicle that was designed more for the urban environment than big, long stretches of highway driving. And the kind of safety tech that's available in top trims also seems more city-focused as well. You can get blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. That's where you'll be warned of passing vehicles as you're backing out of a parking spot. Nice things to have in the urban jungle. But for highway driving, there's no lane keep assist function. There's no forward collision autonomous braking. There's no adaptive cruise control. Features that we see in the likes of the Honda HR-V or the Toyota CHR. One thing those competitors can't touch, though, is the maximum towing capacity here in this car. It's a fairly impressive 2,000 pounds, and obviously you're not going to buy this vehicle if you're doing a lot of towing, but if you've got a little utility trailer or something and you want to be able to go off and do a dump run, it's kind of a nice thing to have in your back pocket. And something else that I think Ford does really well in its whole line of utility vehicles is cornering feel, the steering feel, and the suspension, and the EcoSport is no different. Despite some extra ground clearance for a bit of light off-roading, it's surprisingly nimble. The steering, nicely weighted. The paddle shifters that you get on that sportier SES trim seemed like a bit much, but I gotta say, you take this thing through the corners and it's a pleasant surprise. Elsewhere on the interior, there's some pretty nice tech on board. We have fast-charging USB outlets, easy-to-use climate control buttons, Ford's well-tuned Sync 3 infotainment system on all but the base trim of this car, and back in the second row, I like this. There's a tablet pocket for the right rear passenger so they can easily watch a movie while on the road, and there's this little cell phone pocket on the side of that same seat, which is also a handy place to stow your phone as you're charging it up. But in general, I'd say the interior is pretty utilitarian. Even the higher level trims have a lot of cheap, easy to scratch up, hard plastics on board, and the seats are fine for shorter drives, but get a bit uncomfortable after a long haul. And there's not really any getting around this part. It's pretty darn small, which is just the nature of this segment. While I have plenty of space in the driver's seat, I'm 6'2", putting my seat back as far as I need to leaves pretty limited space in the second row. Now, I didn't bring my car seat along on this trip, so I can't give you those standardized rear-facing car seat numbers that I normally do, but I think it's fair to say that it's going to be quite tight. And one way that Ford improved legroom in the back there is they cut out a sort of divot into the backs of the front seats. So for shorter drives around town, 4 adults could certainly make a go of it. And I do have just enough headroom as well back there as a full-size adult. So you factor in that stuff and it's smack dab in the middle of its competitors when it comes to second row legroom. You'll find slightly more second row space in the Honda HR-V, but the Toyota CHR, the new Hyundai Kona, they actually have less second row legroom. And then it kind of plays out the same way too when we look at trunk capacities in this segment. The HR-V again takes the lead with 688 liters of space behind the second row. The EcoSport has 592 liters, while the Kona and CHR have around 540 liters. But I gotta say, that extra 100 liters in the Honda goes a long way. The trunk is rather tight. Like a dog, for example, probably not gonna work. To help with your gear though, there's the optional cargo tray system, so you can kind of have 2 tiers of stuff and pile in more back there. And then of course you can always flip the seats down too for extra space. But the EcoSport has that very old-fashioned kind of multi-step flip and fold style second row, so it's gonna take you a little longer to reconfigure the cabin for stashing a bike or big items in the back. Now, speaking of the trunk, here's something that Ford brought over to the North American version of the EcoSport that we've seen in other parts of the world for years now that kind of has people divided. It's this swing out style trunk, and I don't mind it until you find yourself in a tight parking spot. It swings out so wide that if you're pinned in with other vehicles, it won't fully open up. One simple solution would have been to offer up a flip up rear window like we saw in the new Expedition a few months ago, you know, for quickly accessing the trunk to collect your groceries or whatever. But as it stands, you'll have to be extra careful not to schmuck other cars every time you go to open the trunk in this thing. Well, the EcoSport is an interesting new addition to the subcompact utility market here in North America. It's certainly not the cheapest option. The HR-V and the Kona have lower starting prices. It's not the roomiest option. It's not the most luxurious either. The Kona's new 1.6-liter turbo engine leads the charge when it comes to horsepower, but in terms of handling, fuel economy, particularly in that surprisingly capable little 3-cylinder, and the techie little features that are on board, this is a good little vehicle to round out Ford's utility offerings. And considering that the company came out quite recently saying that they're kind of getting out of the traditional car business and instead focusing on trucks and utilities, this is the sort of small vehicle that's replacing hatchbacks of the past. And Ford says it's what Canadians want. Now, next time I see you, we're going to be in a car, a more traditional sedan, the brand new Volkswagen Jetta, so make sure to check that out in about 7 days from now, right here on Family Wheels.